We are going to continue with our unit on immigration by adding two new concepts called urbanization and corruption. In order to best understand these concepts, let's review the reasons why people came to America in the first place. People came to America with hope for better opportunities. They had heard stories of a thing called the American Dream, where Americans would work hard and achieve great things. So people from around the world came hoping to make it big in America. Another reason for immigration is the desire for religious freedom. There are many places in the world where the government has decided which religion they would like their citizens to practice, and other religions are condoned and not allowed. That's why many people came to America, so that they could practice their religion freely and without any discrimination from the government. Our third major reason for immigration is to escape oppressive governments. The word oppression is a tricky word, kind of intimidating vocabulary word, and it's often misunderstood, so let's take a closer look. Oppression simply means prolonged cruelty or unfair treatment, control. So, for example, if a government is telling its citizens what they can and cannot do, telling them what they should believe in and how they should feel, that would be an oppressive government. People came to America for the basic freedoms that we have here, like freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and of course, freedom of religion. So people from around the world wanted to escape their oppressive governments by coming to America. Another major reason for immigration is people came to America because they desired adventure. They had heard stories of the Wild West and of people taking on jobs as cowboys and gold miners, and it was just a very exciting idea of coming to the United States. In order to understand the concept of urbanization, there are two major vocabulary words that you need to understand. The first one is this word rural. It's a little funny to say, rural. And basically it's a descriptive word that describes a farm-like area outside in the country. So if you picture any kind of farm landscape, that place would be described as being rural. It's far from the city, it's out in the country. And rural can also be a way to describe a person too, like if someone comes from the country, you can describe them as rural. The second vocabulary word is urban. It's the exact opposite of rural. It's a descriptive word that describes a place having to do with the city. So if you think of a city landscape, any place, New York, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia, those are urban areas. You can also describe a person as being urban. Maybe they give off like a city vibe, or they dress with a city style. They could have an urban style. So you've got rural and urban. This fancy word urbanization describes a thing that was taking place during the time of immigration, like the early 1900s. Urbanization is when a city's population grows rapidly, usually because of a result of immigration. Urbanization can be a great thing and is an exciting time in history. However, it often causes problems when the population grows so quickly and so rapidly that they have not planned for all of the people that the city would need to take care of. So for example, if the city's population grows by a couple 100,000 people, you would need more police departments, more fire trucks. You would need better sanitation plans for picking up things like the garbage and recycling. Those are all big issues that we'll need to face during the time of urbanization. There are a couple of reasons why cities grow. One is that during this time period in the early 1900s, cities began to take on industries or businesses that they specialized in. So when you specialize in something, you focus in it. So for example, Pittsburgh had taken on the industry of steel, and they specialize in producing steel for our entire country. Chicago specialized in meat packing. If you remember from our West unit, Chicago marked the halfway point between the cattle drives in the West and the markets in the Northeast. So Chicago geographically made perfect sense to be that halfway stop where the meat packing industry would be. Another reason why cities grow is the actual title of our unit at the moment. With so much immigration going on and people coming voluntarily to live in America, cities' population is going to grow rapidly. The third reason why the cities began to grow so quickly is because people began to move from rural areas in the country to urban areas in the city. And that's as a result of this thing called mechanization. And we'll be writing that vocabulary word down soon. Mechanization is when technology starts to advance and we start to make machines that do the work for people. So suddenly there's less need for workers on the farms and more need for people to work in the factories and businesses of the city. So we've got a movement from rural to urban areas. Sometimes when cities grow so quickly and there's a lot of change going on, sometimes a thing called corruption takes place. Corruption simply describes dishonest or illegal actions. So if something is described as being corrupt, that means that it is dishonest or illegal against the law. During the time of immigration, corruption revolved around groups of people called political machines. And when I see political machine, you probably are kind of tempted to think of like a piece of machinery or equipment, whether it be a photocopier, a typewriter, some kind of actual technology. These groups of people are called machines because they work and function so well and so smoothly. It's almost as if they are a fine-tuned machine. So what this is, a political machine, is a group of politicians that take advantage of immigrants who settle in large cities like New York City and Chicago. These machines are so fine-tuned and work so well, even though they're corrupt. They work so well because all of the politicians have agreed to not give each other up and to not actually leave any evidence of the activities they're doing that would be considered against the law. So you can see who stole the people's money. It's really hard to figure out because everyone else is blaming somebody else. They make it almost impossible to track down any corruption that's taking place. Political machines gain power. These groups of people gain power by attending to the needs of new immigrants. So I want you to think for a minute. If you are a new immigrant, you just gave up your life halfway across the world to start over in the United States, what kinds of things would you need? If you guessed a job, need food on the table, and a place to live, you're correct. If you're starting over a brand new life in America, once you leave Ellis Island and you enter the big city, you're going to need a paycheck, you're going to need to get a job, you'll need food to survive, and of course you need shelter, you need a place to actually sleep at night. Well, these political machines, the politicians, would actually wait around at the gates of Ellis Island, and they would introduce themselves and become best friends with all of the new immigrants. So a politician might be standing at Ellis Island saying, "Hey, how are you? Welcome to America. You have a place to live? Where are you headed? Are you hungry? You must be hungry." And the political machines would have already set up. They would have meals ready for them. They would have housing available. But they wanted something in return. They weren't just nice men. Instead, these politicians need votes in order to remain powerful and remain in politics. So it was kind of a give and take. We'll give you jobs, food, and housing if you promise to vote for us in the next election. Very smart of them. However, it was a bit dishonest because it was almost like bribery. There's a very famous political machine in New York City. The machine is called Tammany Hall, and they were controlled by a political boss. The leaders of the machines are known as bosses. It was controlled by a boss named William Tweed, so he was known as Boss Tweed. And I'm going to give you an example of what these political machines might do. So for example, a new courthouse was going to be built in New York City. They would call it the Tweed Courthouse. During construction, Tweed, the leader of the machine, so he's a politician, Tweed told the building contractors to add 100% to the amount that they were going to build a city. So the city is paying for the new courthouse. He says, add, double the price, add 100%. The whole idea is the money that is overpaid for the actual construction cost would be given back to him and the Tammany Hall ring. So all of the extra money that they charge taxpayers, all of those political machines, the men in the political party would end up divvying up the money and sharing it amongst themselves. So what ended up happening is the people of New York City, the taxpayers pay $170,730 for 40 tables and chairs. Eventually, Boss Tweed, along with the mayor and other government leaders, stole a total of $200 million from New York City. Talk about corrupt. With Tweed and his Tammany Hall ring taking most of the money from the city had trouble paying for the best housing opportunities. So most immigrants ended up living in a place called a tenement. A tenement is a small apartment building that's known for being overcrowded, dirty, and unhealthy. Because most immigrants did not come to America with very much money, they often would take on apartments and share them with other immigrant families. So some of these one-bedroom apartments might have upwards of 7 or 8 people living inside them. Let's take a closer look. So here is a tenement. It's the one single apartment building, and inside are all these one-bedroom apartments. Like for example, if we were to peek in a tenement window, you might see something like this. You could tell that it's crowded, it's unhealthy, and it's just not ideal living situation. Cities were overcrowded, jobs were low paying, crime was high, and neighborhoods looked like the slums. The neighborhoods took on names of their own. A ghetto is a poor inner city neighborhood where one particular ethnic group would live. So although today the word ghetto has a negative connotation, it simply means a neighborhood where one particular group, one ethnicity would live, like for example, Little Italy or Chinatown.